Hello, Pearl Jam fan community. Welcome to the Wishlist Foundation's interview series, Candle of Thought, where we illuminate the people, causes, and music that are important to the Pearl Jam community. I am your host, Chrissie Ferguson. Today, I am excited to chat with culinary taco genius and taco jam owner, Jeremy Rasmussen. If you were out on this last Pearl Jam Dark Matter tour, you most likely saw Jeremy and his truck as he traveled to every Pearl Jam venue in order to feed the Wishlist Foundation volunteers and supporters. Jeremy has a lot of great stories to share from the road, and we can't wait to hear about them. I'm especially looking forward to hearing more about the story about his hat exchange with Ed in Nashville. So thank you for chatting with us today, Jeremy. I really appreciate you being here.
Thanks for having me. It's really cool to be here.
Well, tell us a little bit about this idea to feed the faithful. How did this all come to be? How did you decide to hit the road with this truck? And you told me a little bit about this before we were actually recording, but you got to tell everybody about how this came to be.
Well, I guess there's two stories. One is the story of how the truck fell into my world. And the other story is, feed the faithful is great. That's a great way of putting it. That's exactly the phrase I was using early on. So for most of the last 15 years, I've been a stay-at-home dad. I've got 3 children who are now not really children anymore. So in preparation of them being away at school, which now they all are away at school, I got into the food truck business. I bought a waffle truck during COVID, and I sort of taught myself, based on my years of experience in and around kitchens, how to be a food truck person. And that has been a lot of fun. Unfortunately, like I was just explaining to Chrissie, when I got home from the Portland, Oregon show last May, unfortunately, we had a catastrophic fire. My outbuilding, which is where my kitchen was, burned to the ground, and also melted my waffle truck into a puddle of molten aluminum. So that was obviously a traumatic turn of events. I lost a lot of my CDs and posters and other things out in the barn. But the big one was, do I rebuild or not with the food truck? And I ultimately did find this just absolutely amazing decommissioned SWAT truck from a community up the road with a really great history. And so that's the story of how I ended up with a SWAT truck and maybe a little bit of food truck ambition. The Feed the Faithful thing sort of came from I'm a lifer with Pearl Jam, but in addition to the 15 years of stay-at-home dadding, I didn't really ever have the budget for traveling too much. Like I would catch every single show I could in Philadelphia. I would try to catch every show I could in Baltimore. Obviously, Newark or New York City were in play, and maybe even Pittsburgh or Virginia Beach or maybe Boston. But I just caught the local shows when I could. Um, when the kids went away to school and all got full scholarships, which basically meant I got a full scholarship, it was the first time I had the time and the resources to actually travel with with friends to see the band. So my first ever GA experience after 28 years or whatever of being the craziest Pearl Jam nut in the world was last September in Boston. Boston 2. Both Boston shows were pretty incredible. Boston 1 was the first show ever I took my son to with. So we had a really, really great time night 1 in Boston. And then as soon as the show was over, I ran immediately out to the sidewalk, and I slept on the sidewalk for a couple of nights outside of Fenway Park so that I could have my first ever GA experience. And that was, just obviously just transformative. I made incredible friends that, obviously I met up on tour again this last year or this last leg, and just lifelong type friends that I made along the way. But just the whole community of it. Like that was the first time I met Marlene, for example. She just picked me out of the crowd and said, you're wearing a Wishlist shirt. She wanted to take my picture. We were having fun. We were in our element. We had at one point Ed came out to say hi to us. At one point we had like some of the drivers from the crew hanging out with us, and we were making food on the sidewalk, and just it was just a really incredible a lot of this, you've done this, but to me it was just brand new and really, like I said, transformative. And I just got this idea in my head that there are so many of us here waiting in these lines. There's a merch line and there's a GA line and there's, just a town being taken over by Pearl Jam people. And then, everyone's trying to like order DoorDash and things like that. And so I
Right.
just, sitting there with my friend Dan thinking, if only there was a way to bring the food truck here, if there was only some way to combine the two passions or whatever and bring the truck on the road and feed the faithful. That was actually the expression that I used. And you know, we went home and went our separate ways, and then the tour got announced for this leg, and I just got incredibly lucky in the lottery for the first time in my life. Me and a close friend both just had incredible fortune in the lottery and ended up with a handful of GA and other tickets. And so it kind of became real that for the first time in my life, I could, and this wasn't a huge leg, this was 10 shows, but it was stretched out over a month. But the more I kept focusing on the schedule and the tickets that we had in hand and just kept staring at it, it was like, this is one big trip. This isn't two or three little trips. This is like, you almost got the sense when you looked at the tour schedule, you almost got the sense that the band sort of saw a road trip there. And that's just the way my mind works. I've got a lot of years on the road in various jobs that I've had, and that's what you do. You put all the slash marks on the map, and you kind of look at the whole big map, and you kind of imagine it as one big trip. And that's what I kept doing for this. Like there was so like for example, in the lottery, I got GA tickets for Florida one. Well, I'm not going to miss that. Certainly I'm going to plan my entire life now around being in Florida. That week, and that just turned into one thing after the other. My very good tour buddy has a place in the Keys, and so now we're suddenly all going to meet up in the Florida Keys, and then my best friend in the world, Peter from Denmark, who was my roommate in college when Pearl Jam came out. So like my first Pearl Jam friend, he was in New York City that week. So his family flew back home to Copenhagen and he jumped in the truck with me and we drove to Florida. So it's just this weird thing where it kept lining up where on map, on paper, the tour looked really large and unmanageable. But as like the different friends that I was going to see along the way, got back to me with their plans, I realized, well, this is probably a road trip. And so somewhere along the way, just very randomly, Laura from Wishlist made a post that basically said, so this tour is a little bit wild. It's 10 dates, but they're spread out and there's a day off between them and their towns are kind of close, but they're kind of far away. How is everybody doing this? And I just jokingly said, I guess I'll bring my taco truck. And Laura thought that was great. She thought that was very funny. And she's like, will you bring your taco truck? And I was like, I'll bring my taco truck. That'd be fun. So it was always a sort of idea in the back of the head that somehow, I could bring my truck to the people or whatever. And that sort of made it very real. Like Laura being in tune with that idea, just sort of got it all rolling. That of course this is going to be a road trip. Of course I'm going to see all my friends along the way. Of course I'm going to have the adventure of my lifetime. And so it just worked out. I started we didn't have a lot of notice, but the truck is very large. So we didn't have a hard time. I put a shower in it. I put a hot water tank and a cold water tank in it. I put a 3-bay sink in it. I built a Murphy bed out of my bed at home. The logic is if I'm actually going to do this, if I'm going to go on the road for 3.5 or 4 weeks, and if I'm going to still be able to stand up at the end of this tour at these shows, I'm going to have to like bring my bed with me because there's no way
You're
I'm
gonna
going
have
to
to
like,
sleep.
you know, and so and that's really where it just started. I'm kind of jumping around in the chronology there, but that was sort of the logic was like, how in the world is a 50-year-old man going to pull this off? I'm
Right.
going to drive 5,000 miles, and I'm going to, I don't have an unlimited budget. I'm not going to stay in, hotels have gotten wildly expensive now since like
Mhm.
when I used to go to see a show, it'd be $75 or something for a cheap hotel room. Now it's like, some of these cities, Boston's like $350 or something for a hotel room.
Yeah.
So just the idea of the GA line, the culture of the GA line, the sleeping on the sidewalk instead of spending $300 for a hotel room, and being able to. That's really the thing with the food truck for me, is that, like, when I try to boil down what I'm good at, and what I can do and what I'm able to do, is I'm good at that. I'm good at feeding people, and I've always done that. That's sort of been my role for a long time, with my family, but in general, I always host family parties and things like that. And it just sort of came together.
Yeah.
And we were kicking around ideas of what it was, and you've been asking me from the beginning, what is it? What are we calling it? And it was Taco Jam. It just came together as, this um, this idea that somehow all these things fit together in the same place, and we kind of pulled it off,
Yeah.
especially in Nashville, and especially in Pittsburgh, the last day of Pittsburgh. I don't know if you heard or saw any of the videos from Pittsburgh too, but it was the exact thing. It was the vision. And a couple of my friends, they've been there from the beginning. They heard me say, I want to feed the faithful. But Pittsburgh too, there was the whole GA line had just gotten moved over, and the merch line was just about to have to break down their tables and their chairs. And it was like, 2.5 hours into a sunny day, and we were just able to drive right up and park right next to the line. And we probably only made like 100 tacos or something like that before, we sort of got chased away. But it was like, it was the dream. It was like the
Yeah.
exact dream. It was like the people waiting in line for their t-shirts, starving. And here we roll up with music blaring out of the windows, and big giant graphics all over the truck. And that was the vision, and it happened. Somehow it just happened.
Yeah. And so how did you get all those graphics and the stickers all together so quickly?
Not easily. So Laura, actually, is pretty much the answer there. Laura designed some of those stickers, and Laura helped. I guess we had to get some approval and things like that for some of them. I had to find a local print shop that was able to work with me at the last minute, and somehow I was able to. And they printed them, and I picked them up the day I was leaving. And so we drove all the way down to Florida with them in a big box, and we got a campsite down in Florida, and we had a big, sticker party. We got a couple of ladders, and we just we just had a big fun time putting stickers on the truck. And along the way, pretty much at every stop along the way, other people have just come and joined and added their own stickers or put on stickers that we had. But a lot of stops along the way, like even some of the venues for the wish list parties, like the people that work there would come and put stickers from the venue on the truck and stuff.
Yeah.
And it just became this really cool work in progress along the way. Some people wrote messages on the truck, and some people drew little pictures on the truck, and a lot of stickers. So it was a lot of fun.
And so we met at the beginning in Hollywood,
Mm-hmm.
and I guess that's where it kind of all started. We're working inside of the Hard Rock at the pre-party, and here you are running in, making sure that all the volunteers are fed with the most delicious tacos ever. So that was initially the vision, but then when I came out and visited you, I'm looking at the GA line, and you have people in the GA line lined up to get your tacos. And you mentioned that you were just asking for donations. You weren't even charging people, a certain price. And were those
Yeah, no.
donations helping, to go? You mentioned some part of it go toward wish list, and some to helping, I'm sure, also the operation of your truck and the food. But was that even a prior thought, or did you just see everybody at that first show and say, I'm going to also feed these people, not just
Oh no,
the
that was
volunteers?
the vision along the way. I never envisioned selling the tacos. That was never really part of the equation. Like, with a little planning for the next tour, it might be fun, especially in conjunction with Wishlist, if we got like a vending permit so that we could actually open a window and vent to the world and raise money for the world. But that wasn't the setup for this. I wasn't set up to like, I couldn't handle money and cook tacos at the same
Right.
time. So whenever anyone asked us if we were accepting, if we, how much were the tacos, we would just direct them inside to the wish list cup. We would just say, please donate to wish list. And like the one day that Pittsburgh too, because we were there out in the line, a lot of people did flood. I think John Rush was there with me, and a lot of people did sort of flood John with cash, and he just brought it directly to the wish list event and logged it in and put it in the cup. We put lots of money in the cup over the events from the tacos. We didn't take, and then at one point there was a consideration, because like, by like the fourth town, the grocery bill probably started to mount a little.
Yes.
But then this really, really incredible thing happened, just like sort of just out of thin air. We ended up being approached by Damien and some people with EBRP, who asked if we'd like to help provide food for an event that they were doing, and that's a whole nother chapter and definitely one of the big highlights from the tour. Um, but by us doing that event and by Damien insisting that we accept payment for that event, that more than, that was plenty as far as covering groceries and things like that. But it was never conceived as a commercial venture. It was only ever conceived as sort of a, like I don't want to say a front, like a face
Right.
for wish list. The one thing that really stunk was I had asked the printer to make these giant round wish list medallions for the doors. And that was the one thing that wasn't in the crate when I got to Florida. So I only had like little wish list. I had like the 10 album stickers, and I had, there were plenty of wish list stickers on there,
Yes.
but the really big ones that I was hoping to have on there, they weren't on there. But it didn't. I don't think it took anything away from things. We had some really neat graphics. Um,
Yes.
I'd rather show the pictures than just ruin the surprise. But when I post some pictures for you,
Yeah.
some of them are a lot of fun,
Well, the
and
truck.
we got a lot of them from Third Man as well.
Oh, nice. Well, the
Yeah.
truck looked great as you had it, and you can just keep adding as you go.
Yep. Yep.
And we're so grateful for you doing, donating to the Wishlist Foundation. And then also you helped to bring so many of our items from show to show so that we could have everything we needed for each pre-party. So we're so grateful for that.
Yep, that was a lot of fun. Yep, that was a lot of fun feeling connected to it that way.
It's
Yeah, it
very
was
awesome.
yeah, yeah.
So, speaking of, we're gonna skip to that wish list shout out. That was so cool, from Ed, and it really was inspired by you. So, I'd love to hear a little bit more about what happened there with your hat and the exchange there at the show.
No, I don't know if it was inspired. I think it was inspired by Wishlist. It was instigated. It was instigated by me.
I guess
Um,
that's the word. Yes.
so so I guess it must have been either Florida 2 or Atlanta 1. But when I was either unpacking from the first event, like you just described, one of my functions was to bring the gear from Wishlist event to Wishlist event. And I think it was probably Atlanta. I think it was probably when we were unloading from Atlanta 1. Laura had one singular Wishlist baseball cap, and she just sort of kind of handed it to me, and she was like, "Are you a hat guy? Do you want to wear this hat?" And I was like, "Well, I'm not usually a hat guy, but I'll wear this hat." And she was just like, "Well, you don't have to." I was like, "No, I'm gonna wear this hat, but also I'm gonna give this hat to Ed Vedder." And she just sort of like, smiled, and that was that. But a long story ended up in for Nashville too. I was able to get into the GA line very early. Because of Laura and the rest of the wish list people and I having a nice long night out after the day off between shows. So at 3:45 a.m., I was already in the middle of town, so I just jumped in the GA line, and it just really worked out well because two of my good friends were there, and one of them was my ticket buddy. So it just really, really worked out well, and we ended up just one head back on the bump from Ed. So it was a prime location. It was like just one of those magical sort of stories where it was my second ever, rail experience, and it's like, everybody that's been there knows it's just sort of like, you're buzzing all night. You're
Oh
just,
yeah.
between the exhaustion of the line and the excitement and the anticipation, and then you're just hoping that it's exactly what you were dreaming and hoping for. And sometimes that's how it goes. And so the night was just sort of it was just sort of magical. Like I do this thing when I'm in the pit where I let people behind me come in front of me because I'm sort of on the tall side, and like they ended up getting like timbre, like it was like magical. Like our little spot there in the front was like this magical little like perfect spot for the show. And so at one point, Ed kept he kept like stomping his boot in front of me, like right in front of my face. He kept stomping. And so I'm gonna tell two stories in one here, but I kept pretending like I was gonna grab his boot. He used to tell this story back in the old days about a Chrissie Hynde show that he went to where he almost grabbed Chrissie Hynde's boot. And so I kind of had that in the back of my head, and I kept pretending like I was gonna grab his boot. And then at one point, he made it clear that he wasn't going to leave his boot until I grabbed it. So I did. I grabbed it. And it became a running theme for the rest of the show. Like him and Mike started pretending to grab each other's foot. And like Ed told the Chrissie Hynde story, which I guess I just found out that at 6 o'clock tonight, Sirius is going to air the National 2 show. So right now, while we're
Nice.
doing this, they're airing it. So I'll have to listen for sure. But that's when Ed told the story about going to the Chrissie Hynde show and pretending to grab her boot a couple of times, and then one time grabbing her boot, and then her pretending to kick his teeth in. And so he pantomimed the thing. He pretended to kick my teeth in or whatever. And then like just a few minutes later, he came out with, he was talking about Third Man Records. And I don't know if it's because it was a continuation of the goofing off that we were doing from the boot, or if it was just that I was the first guy there. But the first hat that Ed reached out with, he just put it right in my hands. And so, I'm completely excited. I can post a picture, immediately. Somebody took my picture with it, and, it was very, very exciting. I put it right on my head. I pretty much haven't taken it off my head since. And right after, he gave out a couple more hats. And it was funny because after the show, I went over and said hello to somebody with one of them on, and it turned out to be Chris Chelios. But I didn't, he was just being cool about it because he was geeking out wearing the hat too. But so it's at this point in the show where Ed's about to sit in the stool and do his encore from the stool kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it just that little moment where the crowd gets very quiet in anticipation, and just that little moment where Ed's been talking a little bit, but he's not talking, and you're not sure if he's going to keep talking or if he's going to play, and there's just that
Right.
little hesitation. And so I grabbed the Wishlist hat, and I just the perfect toss. It just landed like, he couldn't not grab it. And so if you see the video, it's pretty cool because I want that hat back. He spent a lot of time shaping it and molding it in the Ed Vedder way or whatever. But he recognized that it was a Wishlist hat, and he was inspired by all of the things that Wishlist has done for 20 years, and just proceeded to take a couple of minutes of the night and just talk about it. And it was
Yeah, that was so cool. Everybody the next morning, because I didn't make it to that show, everybody was so excited. So thank you for throwing him that hat.
it was really special. It was obviously there's a connection there that feels right, but also just that it just felt really gratifying to be able to, it couldn't have gone better. Like it was just like, just to see him really, really love Wishlist and take the time to thank us. I mean,
Yeah.
that was it was pretty incredible.
It was really, really cool. And another great experience you had, and you mentioned it a little bit earlier, but you had the opportunity to be there for the EBRP plunge for Patterson.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. And I'm such a loudmouth. I keep talking and talking about Nashville 2. Nashville 2 was incredible. All of Nashville was incredible. But somewhere around there was when I was approached formally by a couple of people about the plunge for Patterson. And of course, it was just immediately exciting to be approached about it. But as it turns out, it was really Patterson really loved the idea of the truck. And so it became like I don't know, just it was a very magical day. It was Patterson himself that wanted us to be a part of it, and it was a gentleman, Damien, who decided that he was going to make this thing happen, and he hosted an incredible event in his backyard, and there was a plunge for Patterson that we did in Damien's pool, and Damien's kids played some Pearl Jam music and some other music, some Glenn songs and some Ed songs, and Patterson's family was there, and it was just a really incredible experience. He ate like 8 tacos, which they were
Oh.
completely shocked. They were like, he can't even eat, he can't keep eating these tacos, but he kept eating the tacos. And so like there were a lot of kids there. There were mostly kids there. And
Mhm.
the first hour or so, we were serving tacos, but they weren't really sure. Are they spicy? Are they, is it the kind of food that we would like? But then we all stopped for a little while and we went over by the pool, and there were a few words that were said, and Patterson said a few words, which was pretty incredible. He's just an amazing kid. And then we all jumped in the pool, and then everyone wanted tacos again. And that time it was different. It wasn't like everyone was being timid. Everyone was like eating tacos as fast as we could make them. And it was a lot of fun because a lot of them were kids that, their parents were saying, they don't even eat this food. They don't eat tacos. They've never had a jalapeno in their life or whatever.
What a
So
compliment.
yeah, it was pretty much the mountaintop.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
heard that
There was a crew of us. I had John Resch helped me, Erin Stinkula helped me, Jennifer Anderson helped me, Tim Figueroa helped me, and Erin made some cool shirts and some cool bracelets, and we just had the greatest day ever. It was just a really magical thing.
That's great. And Damien said they exceeded their expectations as far as what they raised for EB Research Partnership, which is amazing. So thank you for being a part of that, because you helped bring the people there, and you, like you just said, you just fed the children. You made everybody happy. You're the light in the in the room. So we appreciate that.
That's a pretty magical thing to have somebody say that felt really good that day, and thank you for saying that. Yeah, that was beyond the dream. The dream was our community, and it's one thing to know that our community is you and me and all these other people, but there are a lot of kids, there are a lot of 20-year-olds, there are a lot of 10-year-olds, and it just felt just beyond cool to see generations of fans in one place, just having nothing to keep them in common other than Pearl Jam and tacos.
Right.
And
doing good things for others, which is so awesome.
Yeah, it was a great feeling.
That's great. Well, I know you have probably a whole list of things that stand out as amazing things that happened, but I know that you probably had a couple of challenges along the way. I'm still amazed that your truck made it this entire trip.
Well, funny.
Almost.
Almost. The truck is still about an hour east of Pittsburgh right now. So somehow the truck knew to do everything that was asked of it, including driving to the plunge for Patterson, which I had no idea the mountains in Pittsburgh were as steep as the mountains anywhere, but Pittsburgh was challenging on the truck. Yeah. And we did it. We made it. We made it all the way to the plunge. We made it all the way back. I made it to Pittsburgh too, which was just beyond incredible. That night was, we can talk about that one for hours. But the next morning I woke up, jumped in the truck for my 4.5-hour drive home, and I did not make it home. The truck is still there, but it's fixed. I just got a call about an hour and a half ago that the truck is ready. So tomorrow morning at 8:30 in the morning, I'm gonna go home, and I'm finally gonna bring it home. So there were roadblocks along the way. We got to South Carolina. It was like 2 days into the trip, and we stopped for gas, and nothing. I went to turn the key after we loaded up with gas, and this is like April 21st, nothing. And I just started to panic a little bit, but somehow managed to get my mechanic from home on the phone. And he just really patiently walked me through some diagnostics and things. And we basically figured out that it was the starter, and that there was one store in the county that had a starter on the shelf, but the store closed in 10 minutes. And so we just made it in time, and we got the starter. And I had this random shoebox of tools, and somehow they were the tools that I needed. And we changed the starter on the side of the road in South Carolina in about an hour and a half, and we got back on the road along the way. So that was fun.
Amazing.
I was feeling pretty good after that, and also I don't know. There's probably video out there. I think Yaku took some good video where after that repair, every once in a while to start the truck, I'd have to climb underneath of it with like a wrench or something, and I'd have to jump the solenoid and like not electrocute myself and not get run over by the truck. And so there's some good video out there of me starting the truck from underneath of it. But finally, in Somerset, Pennsylvania, the transmission control module burned up, and it had to be repaired. But
Wow.
It's repaired now. But it was actually it was a lot easier than I thought it was. I didn't realize until I got home that most of the people that know me best were not expecting the truck work out. Everyone was like, Jeremy, it's magical that it made it this far, and we certainly didn't expect it to go this far. But I actually was very confident in it, and it ran great the whole time. Like, you can expect a 35-year-old truck to throw something at you once in a while, like a starter or
Right.
something like that. But I was ready for most things, but it's just an oddball truck that's 35 years old. So when it ended up having a burned up transmission control module, I just had to wait. I just had to find someone that sold that part, and there's probably only one guy in the whole country that was able to do it for me, and I just happened to know him because I'm active in those communities or whatever. And we tracked down the parts, and now the truck's ready. So
Amazing.
tomorrow
Everything seemed to work out in your favor.
Yeah.
It is as if the stars aligned and this was all meant to be. So cool.
It felt good to realize that if the truck broke down any other day, it would have been a disaster. But it broke down the day that I had, it was just my 30th anniversary. So, I got home. That's all. I got home at 11:45.
Oh, wow. You just made it.
15 minutes to spare.
15 minutes to spare.
15 minutes to spare. Yeah.
Now, so what do you see? We talked a little bit about this before, but for everybody else to hear, what do you see for your future with, Taco Jam, whether it's for Pearl Jam, because we don't know how long it's going to be till they tour again, but it seems like, yeah, we don't speak that out loud, but it seems like you've got a future in this taco truck business, and I'd love to hear what you're thinking about.
It's an interesting. It's the question. My kids, like I said, they're not grown ups now, but they're sort of settled in. My daughters are settled in Maine, and my son's settled in Boston. A week after I left for this trip, because I left for this trip on April 20th, Easter Sunday, and on that Friday following, my wife sent me a picture. She listed the house for sale. So we've been overdue for this for a long time, and I'm a very hesitant person that doesn't make really good decisions quickly enough. So Vanessa took it upon herself to go ahead and list the house while I was going on this trip. So it's possible there's a lot of change on the horizon, and I don't know what's next. To answer your question directly, I was booked for 3 jobs while I was on the road, and so on June 7th, I'm doing a graduation party in Maine. From Pearl Jam fans that hired me to do that. And
Nice.
another guy hired me to do his 50th birthday party in July. And I do have some other graduation parties booked and things. So for now, Taco Jam is very much alive. And if the wind takes me somewhere more exciting than Vineland, New Jersey, which is where I live right now, then I'm pretty sure Taco Jam will live on for the foreseeable future.
Yeah.
It's
Very cool.
Yeah,
We got to get you a website, and
that was always the first question anyone ever asked me. They're like, "What's your onlines?" And I'm like, "I don't have any. I don't know what you're talking about."
the next step. Next step.
One thing I'd like to do. So there were a lot of cool things that happened along the way, but one of the really cool things that happened along the way was the venue in Nashville where Wishlist held their events was very gracious and let me park the truck there during the whole weekend, or the whole week rather. And so when I went to go get the truck from Old Smoky's Distillery on the Friday morning after the shows were over, there were people that had gathered around the truck. There were people that had met me the night before, and I told them about the truck, or there were people that were on their way to Third Man Records down the road, and they saw the truck. And one of the people that was sort of hanging out at the truck that Friday morning was a gentleman who's a retired writer for the Rolling Stone. And he recently made headlines as the editor of Backstreet Magazine, which is Bruce Springsteen's fan magazine, which recently folded because of some things going on in that community. Anyway, he explained to me a Neil Young project that there was a year that Neil Young did a tour that he had no press, he had no cameras, he had no official documentation at all. And so at the end of the tour, the fans took it upon themselves to source this massive, photo journal of the tour. And they produced a movie, out of it. And I'm not having such highfalutin ideas as that, but at some point I would love to reach out to the community and anyone that has any picture or video. There were all kinds of people that came up to the truck. I was traveling with my friend Dan, who's a skateboarder, and he was doing tricks, and there were kids that were coming around and hanging out for various reasons along the way. If there's anybody that has any photos or videos, I'd love to create a way to try to collect them, because that's not I don't know how to do that stuff.
Yeah, well, we could connect them to you, or they could always email us at Wishlist Foundation, info@wishlistfoundation.org. And we'll see where we could go from there. But we just thank you so much for everything that you did for the Wishlist Foundation this tour. It's just unbelievable. I mean, from feeding us and the volunteers and the people waiting in the lines to taking our stuff from event to event. And you're just so reliable, and we just can't thank you enough.
I had a blast. Big thanks to my mechanic for keeping the truck on the road. But these are just about the very best thing in the community, and it was really, really awesome to be a part of it. It was a hoot the whole way. It was like I met just tons of people at every step, and they're all the greatest people that you can possibly meet.
I bet. Well, and you used to be an English teacher, and you wrote for a magazine. So guess what? You could write a book.
You're cramming it all in there. Yes. That's if the food truck thing doesn't work out, I might just have to go back and hit the classroom. That's
yes.
That's the only reason I can't be more enthusiastic about the food truck thing. I mean, if anybody out there listening is in the food truck world, it's not easy. It's a lot of work. But it's just a blast. It's just so much fun. The only reason I'm not more excited about it is because, there's part of me that still wants to get back into the classroom. And the truth is I'll end up having to pick one or the other. It's going to be really hard to do both. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Well, we wish you all the best of luck in everything in your future. And we just can't thank you enough for everything that you did for us.
I'm the one who I made out like a band. You guys were an absolute blast the whole way, and it felt good to have some purpose out there. It was if you're going to go on the road for a month, you can't just watch Pearl Jam shows, right?
That's right. Well, thanks, Jeremy, and we'll be talking to you soon. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Chrissie. Safe travels and have a great time.
Thanks.
Thanks very much. Yeah, bye-bye.